Hi students, Mrs. Gaunt here. Here we are, week 7, ready to do the notes section. If you did your notes section and processing activities for week 6, and you're a distance learner student, you remember that I made a video for you and did the whole process with you. That's what we'd be doing if we were in class together, and that's what this video is about also. So your notes are a reading that we're going to do together. We're calling it a close reading, which means we're going to pick it apart as we go. We're going to mark it and highlight things, and I'm going to read it. I'm going to show you what to mark and highlight. If you do it right along with me, then you'll be finished with this activity as soon as you're done with this video. Last week when we did it in week 6, I asked you to put the video on one half of the page and your OneNote on the other side of the page so that you could actually do it right along with me. Try and set up your page so it's something like that. Might be different since this is an embedded video, but really try to do the work right along with me. That way you'll be done when you're done watching the video. All right, let's get right to it. So we're going to start by writing a purpose. Purpose is what are we looking for as we're reading the article? Anytime you do a close reading, you should identify the purpose so that as you're reading, you know what to keep an eye out for. All right, so I'm going to write it right up here at the top. Where'd my cursor go? I'm going to double click kind of right here. I'm going to try and use color and notations to help me out. I also have a stylus. You can draw with your finger, but if you have a stylus, you might be more comfortable using that as well. All right, I'm also going to use this up at the top. There's this nice menu of choices you can use up here. So if you wanted to highlight something that would automatically, or type something that would automatically be highlighted, or would have a star next to it, or a question mark, or an exclamation mark, those will be helpful things that we can use. And I'm going to choose important. And see, it puts a star right there. And now I'm going to type what our purpose is. Purpose. To learn how plants make their own food and how plant and animal cells turn food into energy. That's my purpose. All right. Whoops. So if at any point you need a little more time, just pause the video and catch up with me, and you'll be doing great. One more thing. I like when I make my text, when I type text, I don't really want it to look just like text. I want it to look different from the article that I'm highlighting. So I'm going to choose something called, whoops, I'll go up here and choose it. I'm going to choose something called Comic Sans. It happens to be right at the top of my choice. It won't be for you. You'll have to scroll down to the C's and choose Comic Sans down here. But once you choose it, it will always be at the top. And I just like that because it looks a little more like handwriting, and I can distinguish it easily from the text that I'm trying to mark up. And since this is our purpose and it's important, I am also going to highlight it. So I'm going to come over here to our highlighting tool and make it yellow. All right. Often when we look at text, we might be numbering the paragraphs. I'm not going to do that here. It would take us a long time, and it's a lot of formatting. So students, normally when I mark up a text, I do it on paper. You can see that I have done that here. I've marked a lot of things. It's a little bit easier on paper, but we're going to try this digitally this time, just because that's the world we're living in right now. All right, so whenever I do a close reading, I also look around the page to see what else I need to be paying attention to. And anybody who writes a textbook often gives you little helps. And that's what we find right over here on the left. It tells us in advance what we're going to learn about. We're going to describe photosynthesis and cellular respiration, and we're going to compare cellular respiration with fermentation. And our vocabulary words, which we will know by the time we're done, are photosynthesis, cellular respiration, and fermentation. So I feel like those are important. So I'm going to put a box around them. I'm going to go to my Draw tab, and I'm going to choose a fat pen. So the pens are over here on the left, the highlighters are over here on the right, and I can choose the thickness that I want. I'm going to choose a thick orange pen. Then I'm going to come over here and choose the box tool from the Shapes menu. And I'm going to make a big orange box around this. Whoop. Don't forget about your undo tool. If you do something like I just did, you can undo. All right, and now I'm going to choose my box tool. It didn't like that. Now I have my box tool. There we go. Box tool, I'm going to make a big orange box around this stuff. It's important for me to remember, so I'm going to keep that box right there. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my home space, and this time I'm going to click right, I'm sorry. Let's go back to Draw. Every time you're done drawing, don't forget, you have to come over here and click the Type tool. Otherwise, it'll still be a drawing tool when you don't want it to be. All right, let's go to Home, and I'm going to click above the box that I just drew, and I'm going to choose Question. Question. There it goes. Question mark shows up, and I'm going to type, can you define these processes? And I'm going to highlight that in yellow. Because whenever you mark up something in a text, you're not just doing it for the one time. You're doing it so that you'll be able to, that you'll know about the thing you're reading about. You know, it's not like as soon as I'm done marking things up, then I'll suddenly know everything. I'll still have to go back and look at my notes and look at my markups. So I'm leaving myself a little note here. Can you define these processes? That's a note to myself. So when I come back and look, I can say, oh, yeah, I don't remember if I can do that. Oh, and look at what just happened. This shouldn't happen to you. I don't know why it's happening, but do you see how everything just shifted because I accidentally moved stuff? Remember your undo tool. Undo will change the moving also. So I can click undo and things go back to where they were supposed to be. It shouldn't be moving. I don't know why it's doing that. All right, let's get down to business. All right, I'm going to start reading. The title of our article is called Cell Energy, and we're going to learn about how cells make food and how food is turned into energy. So I'll start reading. Why do you get hungry? Feeling hungry is your body's way of telling you that your cells need energy. I bet you never thought of it that way before. You just thought being hungry meant you had an empty stomach. And it does. But it also means that your cells have run out of food. They don't have anything to make energy from, so they cause you to feel hungry. The second paragraph says this. All cells need energy to live, grow, and reproduce. Plant cells get their energy from the sun. Many animal cells get the energy they need from food. From cell to sun. Nearly all of the energy that fuels life comes from the sun. Plants capture energy from the sun and change it into food through a process called photosynthesis. Hey, that seems important. I'm going to go get my highlighter tool in the Draw menu. I'll choose yellow. You can choose something else. Just make sure it's a highlighter so that it doesn't cover up the text. And I'm going to highlight that sentence that I just read. In the paragraph from cell to sun, I'm going to start with plants capture energy, and I'm going to go all the way through photosynthesis. By the way, when you're highlighting, it helps if you can move your hand quickly. It just makes a smoother highlight. All right, so I'm going to click and highlight that whole sentence. And I'm going to come down and finish it on the second line through a process called photosynthesis. All right, and if you do it and it's messy and you want to redo it, just pause and go hit the undo button and try it again. Remember though, after you're done highlighting, it's always good to go click on the type menu. That way you don't get stuck accidentally making marks on your page. So to finish that paragraph, it says the food that plants make supplies them with energy. The food also becomes a source of energy for the organisms that eat those plants. So even though animal cells can't do the process of photosynthesis, we actually get the food by eating plants or by eating animals that have eaten those plants. All right, the next section is called photosynthesis. It says this: plant cells have molecules that absorb light energy. These molecules are called pigments. Chlorophyll, say that, chlorophyll is the main pigment used in photosynthesis. It's what gives plants their green color. Chlorophyll is found in chloroplast. Next paragraph. Plants use the energy captured by chlorophyll to change carbon dioxide and water into food. That seems pretty important. I'm going to highlight that, and this time I'm going to use green just because it's plants and it's using chlorophyll, which is green. I'm going to highlight that, bring it down, and highlight the first paragraph, the first sentence in that second paragraph under the heading photosynthesis. So here it is. Plants use the energy captured by chlorophyll to change, next line, carbon dioxide and water into food. It's pretty amazing if you think about it, that we start with carbon dioxide and water, and plants can just turn it into food just because they have energy from the sun. Kind of crazy. Then go back and click the type key. I'm going to read, I want to do one more thing. I'm going to come back up here and get, so these are the highlighters, right? And then the fat pens over here, I'm going to choose a green fat pen this time. And I'm going to draw a circle around the word photosynthesis. See if I can do this without making a big mess of it. Okay, that's not bad. And then I'm going to draw an arrow from the definition I just highlighted back up to the word photosynthesis, because that thing that I just highlighted is a pretty good definition of photosynthesis. Okay? All right, so I'm going to keep reading. Go back and click the type tool. The food is in the form of a simple sugar called glucose. Glucose is a carbohydrate. When plants make glucose, they convert the sun's energy into a form of energy that can be stored. The energy in glucose is used by the plant's cells. Photosynthesis also produces oxygen. Photosynthesis is summarized in Figure 1. Okay, let's go down to Figure 1. Okay, this tells us a lot of stuff here. I'm going to make it a little smaller so I can see the whole picture. Not too much smaller. There we go, that's better. I want to see the whole picture because I'm going to mark it up. All right, and so over here on the left, you see the word photosynthesis, and it says the process by which plants, algae, and some bacteria use sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to make food. That's a description of the process of photosynthesis. But photosynthesis is actually a chemical reaction that happens inside plant cells. And since it's a chemical reaction, it can be also described as a chemical equation. Oh, look, I left some stuff here from before. Let me fix that. It can also be described as a chemical equation, which is right here on your page. So I want those two things to be boxed in so that I recognize that they both mean the same thing. All right, so I'm going to come up here and choose the green pen, not the green highlighter. And then I'm going to come over here and choose the box. And I'm going to put a green box around the definition of photosynthesis. I'm going to go get the green box again, and I'm going to put it around the equation for photosynthesis. Okay, come back up here and choose the type tool. And now I'm going to, I think I'm going to see how there's this double arrow up here. I'm going to choose that, and I'm going to make a double arrow between those two definitions. And that's supposed to remind me that they both are describing the same process. They're just using different ways to describe it. Let's pay a little bit closer attention to the equation for a second. And this is how you read an equation. Okay, it gives us a chemical formula called CO2, and it says we need 6 CO2s, and it tells us underneath that CO2 just means carbon dioxide. And add to that 6 H2Os. You might recognize that H2O is the formula for water. So we need 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water, and we need light energy to make, that's basically what that arrow is telling us, to make glucose, which is C6H12O6, that's its formula, and oxygen, which is O2. It makes 6 oxygens. So everything on the left side of the arrow is the stuff that goes into the chemical reaction, and everything on the right side of the arrow is the stuff that comes out of the chemical reaction. There's special words for those two parts of the equation, and I'm going to type them over on the right. And I would like to use Comic Sans again as my font, just because it looks different than the text in the article. So I'm going to come over here and choose Comic Sans again, and I'm going to make it bold. And I'm typing out here outside of the article so that I can move it into the place where I want it to be. The first word I'm going to type, and I'm going to use all caps, is reactants. That's how you spell it. You do that. And then I'm also going to make another box, and I have to go back and choose Comic Sans again and bold. And this time I'm going to type all caps the word products. So these are the two terms we use to describe the left side and the right side of a chemical reaction. So I'm going to take the box where I typed reactants, and I'm going to move it over here to the right side of the left side of the equation, left of the arrow, and I'm going to take the word products and I'm going to put it on the right side. And let's see, I think I'm going to use a skinny drawing tool. I'm going to make it yellow. Maybe not yellow, let's make it orange. And I'm going to draw, did I choose skinny? Nope, I want skinny. And I'm going to try and make a circle around what the reactants are. So the reactants are all these things. These are reactants. And then I'm going to use my same tool and I'm going to draw a circle around the products. These are the products. There we go. So the reactants are the things that go into the chemical reaction, and the products come out. That's going to be important for us to know later. I need to do one more thing down here at the bottom, and I'm going to go click on Type and go to my Home tab, because right down here I want to type, and I want this time I want to be typing in Comic Sans, and I'm going to choose bold. And I'm going to choose highlight, and I'm going to type only happens, I'm using all caps, in plants. Only happens in plants. Photosynthesis only happens in plants. Alright, so we highlighted some things, we gave ourselves a purpose, we drew things on our picture, and now it's time to move on to page 2. Alright, so at the top, the first paragraph says, getting energy from food. Let's read it. It says, animal cells have different ways of getting energy from food. One way is called cellular respiration. It uses oxygen to break down food. Many cells can get energy without using oxygen through a process called fermentation. Cellular respiration will release more energy from a given food than fermentation will. Okay, so it's telling us that there are two ways that animal cells turn food into energy. The way that uses oxygen is called cellular respiration. Let's highlight that. So go to your draw tool, choose yellow or whatever color you like, and let's highlight the term cellular respiration. That uses oxygen to turn food into energy. The other way is called fermentation, so let's highlight that. Fermentation does not use oxygen. So up at the top, and I'm going to come here and choose type. I'm going to go home so I can change to Comic Sans just so it looks different than the type. I'm going to write 2 ways to turn food into energy. And then I'm going to go back to the draw tool, choose a color and an arrow, and I'm going to draw an arrow to this way and another arrow. I have to choose the arrow twice to this way. So there's 2 ways. 2 ways. Come back here and choose type. All right. Now let's read about cellular respiration, which needs oxygen, by the way, to happen. So this can sound a little bit confusing, so I want you to be carefully listening to me as I read this to you. So cellular respiration. The word respiration means breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. But cellular respiration is different from breathing. Breathing supplies the oxygen needed for cellular respiration. Breathing also removes carbon dioxide, which is a waste product of cellular respiration. But cellular respiration is a chemical process that occurs in cells. That's an important sentence. So get your highlighter tool, I'm using yellow, and highlight that last sentence in the paragraph where it says cellular respiration is a chemical process that occurs in cells. That's what we're highlighting. Okay, and that paragraph was pretty confusing. I'm going to try and describe it for you a little bit. So when you breathe in and out, you breathe in oxygen, you breathe out carbon dioxide. Those 2 things are part of that chemical reaction that occurs inside your cells. It just so happens that your cells use the oxygen that you breathe in, and your cells get rid of carbon dioxide, which is the same stuff you're breathing out. So they're kind of like an extension of your breathing, because you breathe in oxygen, you breathe it into your lungs, but it doesn't just stay there. It goes in these little air sacs and then into your blood, and your blood carries that oxygen to every single one of your cells in your body. Every single one of your cells. And every single one of those cells is using that oxygen to turn food into energy. And in that process, they have a waste product called carbon dioxide, which goes to your blood, back to your lungs, and when you breathe out, it breathes out that carbon dioxide waste. So they are definitely related, even though one is breathing in, breathing out, and the other is a chemical reaction in your cells. They're both involving oxygen that you breathe in and carbon dioxide that you breathe out. Okay, I'm going to read this second paragraph here that starts with most complex organisms. So follow along. Most complex organisms, such as plants and animals, obtain energy through cellular respiration. During cellular respiration, food, such as glucose, is broken down into carbon dioxide and water, and energy is released. That's an important sentence. Let's highlight that. I'm going to get my yellow highlighter, and we're starting with during cellular respiration. During cellular respiration, next line, food such as glucose is broken down into carbon dioxide and water, and a little bit more in the next line, energy is released. That sentence just described the chemical reaction. So let's go up here to our drawing tool and pick the orange fat pen. And just like we did in the photosynthesis paragraph, I am going to circle cellular respiration. And I'm going to come down here to that sentence I just highlighted, and I'm going to draw an arrow up to the word cellular respiration because it's a good description of cellular respiration. Then come up here and choose the type tool again, and I'm going to read the rest of the paragraph. It says, in animals, most of the energy released is used to maintain body temperature. Some of the energy is used to form adenosine triphosphate, which is the name of a molecule called ATP. ATP supplies us energy that fuels cells' activities. Next paragraph. Most of the process of cellular respiration takes place in the cell membrane of prokaryotic cells. But in the cells of eukaryotes, we are eukaryotes, humans, animals, and plants are all eukaryotes, cellular respiration takes place mostly in the mitochondria. Ooh, that's important. Let's get our highlighter tool again, and I'm going to choose yellow again. And I'm going to highlight the sentence that starts with, in the cells of eukaryotes, we don't need the but, in the cells of, next line, eukaryotes, cellular respiration takes place mostly in the mitochondria, and mitochondria continues on the next line. Okay, and then click type. And I'm going to keep going. The process of cellular respiration is summarized in figure 2. And here's a question. Does the equation in the figure remind you of the equation for photosynthesis? Let's think about that. Figure 3 on the next page shows how photosynthesis and respiration are related. All right, so let's scroll down so we can get as much of this in the picture as possible. I'm going to make it just a bit smaller, just a bit, because I want to see the whole thing. There we go. All right, so you can see, just like on our photosynthesis page, there's a definition for cellular respiration right here, a definition in words, but because cellular respiration is a chemical reaction, there's also a equation. So let's go get our orange drawing tool, fat orange pen. Let's get a box, and we're going to put a box around the words cellular respiration and the definition that goes with it. And get the box tool again, and we'll put a box around the whole equation. Good. And just like we did before, go click on the type tool, go home, and I'm going to click outside of my box, and I'm going to type those two words again using Comic Sans and bold, and I'm going to type reactants, and then set all that again to Comic Sans and bold, and this time I'm going to type products, and let's put those in the right places. So products are on the left side, the right side, and reactants are on the left side. All right, let's go back and get our draw tool, a skinny one this time. I think I'll use skinny green, and this time I'm going to put a circle around the reactants, which are everything that's on the right side of the arrow. There's only two things this time. And the products is everything else. On the right side of the arrow. Okay, go back and click type. I'm going to show you something before we go on. So look at your reactants, and we circled glucose and oxygen. Reactants. Reactants are the things going in to the equation, to the chemical reaction. Glucose and oxygen. Okay, glucose and oxygen. Let's go back up to our photosynthesis equation. Glucose and oxygen are on the product side of photosynthesis, but they're on the reactant side of cellular respiration. Let's look at the products of cellular respiration. Carbon dioxide, water, and energy on the product side. If we go up here to photosynthesis, carbon dioxide, water, and energy are on the reactant side. So these equations, photosynthesis and cell respiration, are the same, except one is backwards from the other. That's kind of weird. Okay, so let's see, did we highlight? No, we didn't do that. Okay. Last thing I want to do is type, let's see. Last time I made a double arrow, and let's get a fat pen, fat orange pen, because I want to do the double arrow. Let me go click double arrow again, between the equation and the words, because they both mean the same thing, kind of like we did in our photosynthesis page. And then down at the bottom, I'm going to type. I'm going to go back home and choose Comic Sans again. Let me click down here first, though. Click down here, then you choose Comic Sans and bold, and I'm going to use highlight. This time I'm going to write happens, too many A's, happens in plant and animal cells. So photosynthesis was only in plant cells, but cellular respiration happens in both. All right, let's keep going. We're almost done. This whole next page is a picture diagram that explains how photosynthesis and cellular respiration are related to each other. So cellular respiration, the word up at the top, happens in the organelle called the mitochondrion. That's where it happens. Photosynthesis, which is described at the bottom, happens in the organelle called chloroplast. But just like I said in the previous, when we were looking at the previous page, the output of the chemical reaction for photosynthesis, glucose and oxygen, is the input for the chemical reaction of cellular respiration. And the output of cellular respiration, which happens in the mitochondria, is the input for photosynthesis, which happens in the chloroplast. Okay, you're going to talk about this a little more in your processing activity 1, so just remember this page is here. All right, let's go to our last page. Just a little bit more and then we'll be done. All right, here it describes the connection between photosynthesis and respiration. It says, as shown in figure 3, photosynthesis transforms energy from the sun into glucose. During photosynthesis, cells use carbon dioxide, CO2, to make glucose, and the cells release oxygen, O2. During cellular respiration, cells use that oxygen to break down glucose and release energy and carbon dioxide. Each process makes the materials that are needed for the other process to occur elsewhere. That last sentence is super important. So let's go to the drawing tool, drawing tab, and choose a highlighter. I'm using yellow, and I'm going to highlight the last sentence in that paragraph where it says, each process makes the materials that are needed for the other process to occur elsewhere. All right, go back and click on type. Let's read this last paragraph. So remember, I'm going to scroll back up for a second because at the top of our second page, we said there's 2 ways to turn food into energy. One is cellular respiration and one is fermentation. Then we talked about cellular respiration, and now we're finally talking about fermentation. So this is the other way that your cells can make energy. It's not the most efficient way. Cellular respiration is much more efficient, but this way is needed sometimes. Here's an example. Let's say you're running a marathon, right? You're running along, you're breathing and you're jogging and you're breathing and you're jogging, and your body is making energy. Your mitochondria are turning food into energy so you can keep running and keep running. All those muscle cells in your body have a lot of mitochondria, and they're all turning food into energy. And what happens when you're running? What happens with your breathing? You start breathing faster, right? Because you can't just breathe slowly when you're running. Your body needs to make more of that energy, and it needs oxygen to do it. So it causes your body to start breathing faster so you can get more of that oxygen in, so your cells can use it to make energy, and it asks your cells to your lungs to expel carbon dioxide to get it out of your body, because that's the waste product of this whole process. So you're breathing in more so you can produce more energy. But at some point, you're not going to be breathing fast enough to get those cells to keep making energy. And you may need to kick in energy from a different process. That's the process called fermentation. So let's read this paragraph. Have you ever felt a burning sensation in your leg muscles while you were running? When muscle cells can't get the oxygen they need to continue with cellular respiration, they will use the process of fermentation to get energy. One kind of fermentation happens in your muscles, and it produces lactic acid. The buildup of lactic acid contributes to muscle fatigue and causes that burning sensation in your muscles. This kind of fermentation also happens in the muscle cells of other animals and in some fungi and bacteria. Another type of fermentation occurs in some types of bacteria and in yeast, as described in Figure 4. Figure 4 says this: yeast forms carbon dioxide during fermentation. The bubbles of carbon dioxide gas cause the dough to rise and leave small holes in bread after it's baked. So we're going to highlight one sentence in this paragraph, and it's the one that says, when muscle cells can't get the oxygen they need for cellular respiration, they use the process of fermentation to get energy. So get your highlighter tool. Yellow is fine. When muscle cells can't get the oxygen needed for cellular respiration, they use the process of fermentation to get energy, because fermentation does not need oxygen. All right, let's go back down here at the bottom. We're going to go to our, click type, go to home, and back up here where we have important. I'm going to click down here underneath the summary, and I'm going to click the important flag up here, and I'm going to type. I'm going to switch it over to Comic Sans again, and I'm going to type, you should know these now. And then I'm going to use my draw tool and a fat red this time, and I'm going to draw an arrow up to these. And while we're at it, let's make a box around the summary to remind us that we're supposed to know these things now that we finished. So this would be a great thing if you're studying and you want to make sure you know the things you're supposed to know. These are the things you can ask yourself. Do you know these things? And not just do you read them and just go, oh yeah, that sounds familiar, but do you really know it, right? Science is that thinking kind of topic, right? You need to be having ideas floating around in your mind and rolling around together until your mind, your brain can do the work to make sense out of it. It takes thinking, takes time, and it takes using that information. And you're going to use that information now in the processing activities. Good job. Thanks for sticking with me. You're done with the notes, and now you can go to your checklist and click off that you finished marking up the notes. Good job, guys.